You've been on dates that looked perfect on paper. Smart person, interesting conversation, nothing obviously wrong. But halfway through dinner, you felt it. That quiet, creeping flatness. Like you were going through the motions of something that was supposed to feel exciting, and it just didn't. So you smiled. You asked the right questions. You tried. And afterward, alone in your car or your bedroom, you sat with a familiar feeling. Not heartbreak, not even disappointment, just this low, tired ache of, again. You've probably told yourself you're too picky, that you're the problem, that normal people don't feel this way. Stay until the end, because what you're about to learn might completely change how you see yourself. Because you're not broken, you're not too much. You are wired for something most people will never understand. There was a time when you weren't like this. When you were small, you connected easily. You got excited about things. You shared everything. You assumed everyone thought the way you did, deeply, constantly, in layers. Until one day, something shifted. Maybe it was the friend who laughed at something you said seriously. Maybe it was the person you loved who couldn't follow where your mind went. Maybe it was just the slow, repeated lesson that depth makes people uncomfortable. So you learned to shrink it. You learned to meet people where they were. You became fluent in surface, even though it cost you something every time. And eventually, dating started to feel like performing, like showing up as a smaller version of yourself just to be chosen. And some part of you decided, quietly, without words, that being chosen wasn't worth the cost of becoming less. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. Psychologists call it need for cognition. It's your brain's hunger for complexity, meaning, and depth. Researcher John Cacioppo studied this extensively. He found that people with high need for cognition don't just prefer deep conversations. They literally find shallow interaction unstimulating at a neurological level. Your brain isn't being snobby. It's being honest. It's telling you, this connection isn't feeding me. And here's the relationship science layer. Research from the University of Western Australia found that intelligence, particularly in romantic contexts, creates what they call a compatibility gap. The higher your cognitive complexity, the smaller the pool of people whose inner world genuinely matches yours. In other words, you're not failing at dating. You're operating in a smaller market than most people realize. Your brain was never going to settle. It was always going to hold out for something real. Most people fall in love with the idea of a person, the way they look, the way they make them feel seen for a moment. You fall in love with someone's mind, the way they think, the questions they ask, the silences they're comfortable in. While most people are looking for chemistry, you're looking for resonance. While most people can date casually, you feel the emptiness of it in your chest. That's not a defect, that's discernment. You have a high threshold for connection because you know what real connection feels like. You've tasted it, maybe once, maybe rarely, and you've never been able to pretend that anything less is enough. That is not being too picky, that is knowing yourself. And in a world full of people settling, that is rare. And it is quietly brave. But there's something worth naming here. There's a difference between high standards and a closed door. There's a difference between waiting for depth and using depth as armor. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the very intelligence that helps you see people clearly also helps you disqualify them quickly. You notice the red flag on date 1. Good. But sometimes you notice the way someone laughs too loudly, or uses a word wrong, or doesn't know a reference you made, and you're already writing the ending before the story starts. Real connection asks you to stay curious a little longer, not to lower your standards, but to remember that depth sometimes arrives slowly, and that the person who can match your mind might not reveal that in the first hour. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are not going to be alone forever because you refuse to pretend. You are someone who loves with their whole mind. And that kind of love, when it finds its match, is one of the most extraordinary things two people can share. The world needs people who hold out for real. You are one of them. And that is not your flaw. That is your depth made visible. If this felt like someone finally put words to something you've carried quietly, drop a comment below. Tell me, have you ever felt like you had to hide how deeply you think just to connect with someone? I want to know. If you want to understand yourself at this level every week, subscribe. This channel exists for people who are done with surface. And next video, we're going into something even deeper. Why highly intelligent people often feel like they're watching their own life from the outside. You'll want to see that one.